Welcome to Bite at a Time Books, where we read you your favorite classics one bite at a time. My name is Bree Carlile, and I love to read and wanted to share my passion with listeners like you. You can sign up for our newsletter at biteatatimebooks.com. You'll also find our new t-shirts in the shop, including podcast shirts and quote shirts from your favorite classic novels. Be sure to follow my show on your favorite podcast platform so you get all the new episodes. We're part of the Bite at a Time Books Productions Network. If you'd also like to hear what inspired your favorite classic author to write their novels, and what was going on in the world at the time, check out the Bite at a Time Books Behind the Story podcast, wherever you listen to podcasts. Today we'll be continuing Les Miserables by Victor Hugo. Chapter 24, Prisoner. Marius was, in fact, a prisoner. The hand which had seized him from behind, and whose grasp he had felt at the moment of his fall and his loss of consciousness, was that of Jean Valjean. Jean Valjean had taken no other part in the combat than to expose himself in it. Had it not been for him, no one, in that supreme phase of agony, would have thought of the wounded. Thanks to him, everywhere present in the carnage, like a providence, those who fell were picked up, transported to the tap-room and cared for. In the intervals, he reappeared on the barricade. But nothing which could resemble a blow, an attack, or even personal defense proceeded from his hands. He held his peace and lent succor. Moreover, he had received only a few scratches. The bullets would have none of him. If suicide formed part of what he had meditated on coming to the sepulchre, to that spot he had not succeeded. While we doubt whether he had thought of suicide, an irreligious act, Jean Valjean, in the thick cloud of the combat, did not appear to see Marius. The truth is that he never took his eyes from the latter. When a shot laid Marius low, Jean Valjean leapt forward with the agility of a tiger, fell upon him as on his prey, and bore him off. The whirlwind of the attack was at that moment so violently concentrated upon Enjolras and upon the door of the wine shop that no one saw Jean Valjean sustaining the fainting Marius in his arms, traverse the unpaved field of the barricade, and disappear behind the angle of the Corinth building. The reader will recall this angle, which formed a sort of cape on the street. It afforded shelter from the bullets, the grape shot, and all eyes, and a few square feet of space. There is sometimes a chamber which does not burn in the midst of a conflagration, and in the midst of raging seas, beyond a promontory, or at the extremity of a blind alley of shoals, a tranquil nook. It was in this sort of fold in the interior trapezium of the barricade that Éponine had breathed her last. There, Jean Valjean halted, let Marius slide to the ground, placed his back against the wall, and cast his eyes about him. The situation was alarming. For an instant, for 2 or 3 perhaps, this bit of wall was a shelter. But how was he to escape from this massacre? He recalled the anguish which he had suffered in the Rue Polonceau 8 years before, and in what manner he had contrived to make his escape. It was difficult then. Today, it was impossible. He had before him that deaf and implacable house, 6 stories in height, which appeared to be inhabited only by a dead man leaning out of his window. He had on his right the rather low barricade, which shut off the Rue de la Petite Trudière. To pass this obstacle seemed easy. But beyond the crest of the barrier, a line of bayonets was visible. The troops of the line were posted on the watch behind that barricade. It was evident that to pass the barricade was to go in quest of the fire of the platoon, and that any head which should run the risk of lifting itself above the top of that wall of stones would serve as a target for 60 shots. On his left, he had the field of battle. Death lurked round the corner of that wall. What was to be done? Only a bird could have extricated itself from this predicament, and it was necessary to decide on the instant, to devise some expedient, to come to some decision. Fighting was going on a few paces away. Fortunately, all were raging around a single point, the door of the wine shop. But if it should occur to one soldier, to one single soldier, to turn the corner of the house, or to attack him on the flank, all was over. Jean Valjean gazed at the house facing him. He gazed at the barricade at one side of him. Then he looked at the ground with the violence of the last extremity, bewildered, and as though he would have liked to pierce a hole there with his eyes. By dint of staring, something vaguely striking in such an agony began to assume form and outline at his feet, as though it had been a power of glance which made the thing desired unfold. A few paces distant, he perceived at the base of the small barrier so pitilessly guarded and watched on the exterior, beneath a disordered mass of paving stones which partly concealed it, an iron grating, placed flat and on a level with the soil. This grating, made of stout, transverse bars, was about 2 feet square. The frame of paving stones which supported it had been torn up, and it was there, as it were, unfastened. Through the bars a view could be had of a dark aperture, something like the flue of a chimney or the pipe of a cistern. Jean Valjean darted forward. His old art of escape rose to his brain like an illumination. To thrust aside the stones, to raise the grating, to lift Marius, who was as inert as a dead body, upon his shoulders, to descend with this burden on his loins, and with the aid of his elbows and knees into that sort of well, fortunately not very deep, to let the heavy trap, upon which the loosened stones rolled down afresh, fall into its place behind him, to gain his footing on a flagged surface 3 meters below the surface. All this was executed like that which one does in dreams, with the strength of a giant and the rapidity of an eagle. This took only a few minutes. Jean Valjean found himself with Marius, who was still unconscious, in a sort of long subterranean corridor. There reigned profound peace, absolute silence, night. The impression which he had formerly experienced when falling from the wall into the convent recurred to him. Only what he was carrying today was not Cosette. It was Marius. He could barely hear the formidable tumult in the wine shop, taken by assault, like a vague murmur overhead. Thank you for joining Bite at a Time Books today, while we read a bite of one of your favorite classics. Again, my name is Bree Carlile, and I hope you come back tomorrow for the next bite of Les Miserables. Don't forget, you can sign up for our newsletter at biteatatimebooks.com, and while you're there, check out our t-shirt shop. You can look in the show notes or on our website, biteatatimebooks.com, for the rest of the links for our show. We'd love to hear from you on social media. You can find us everywhere at Bite at a Time Books.